Paper. For this class, you're going to need an 18 by 24 pad of watercolor paper. Right here I have one by Canson, but it could be by any company. It's a pretty big pad of paper, and this pad right here has 30 sheets in it. This is cold press watercolor paper. So what you can see, this is not the best quality, but what you can see is a little bit of texture. You should feel kind of a rough texture on the paper. Here I have a watercolor paper pad that has both hot press and cold press paper. So this is, really can't see the texture. This is cold press where it has texture, and this right here on this side you can even see it's a little bit shiny. It's hot press. Hot press paper is really smooth. It's wonderful for detailed work. It's also wonderful if you want to combine watercolor with like pens or markers or other materials. So this large pad of paper should take you through the semester. You can also, for the beginning, cut it or tear it into smaller pieces for your practice studies as well as your color study. You're going to need a board that you can attach your paper to. You're also going to need paints. Watercolor paints come in different formats. These here are watercolor pens or cakes, but you can also find watercolor in, here are some your watercolor. It really doesn't matter. It's kind of a question of preference whether you want to use it in tubes or in a in cans. I personally like them already like this. However, some people really prefer to squeeze out your own colors. One of the advantages is that you can of course create your own palette and kind of choose colors individually, and you can also choose them from different companies and create kind of custom made palettes. But what you do want to have is you definitely want to have a palette that closes kind of like this, or something a little bit bigger if you're going to use colors that are in tubes. And what you need to do is squeeze out your colors, kind of a generous amount into your palette. You can organize, so leave your palette open overnight and then close it, and then you can keep using these colors just like in pens. So having a palette is really essential. This would be kind of like a minimal palette. It's quite small, it's only a few dollars, it's plastic. It has areas where you can squeeze out your paints, but also areas where you can mix your own colors. This is a similar one that's a little bit bigger, which has more room to mix your washes and to mix your colors. I like the size a little bit better. These also come with lids that close up. But if you don't have that, even just a simple dish, a ceramic or even the plastic dish, you can use to mix your colors. And that's Grisha coming by. Is this big, it's too small. You're not going to be able to make a good. The next thing you're going to need is brushes. What you're going to need is a round brush, something like this. It should be really full and soft. Watercolor brushes are made from natural hairs, like for example this one right here. These are called sable brushes. They're made from sable hair. These are quite expensive, but they last for a long time. They're also made from synthetic hairs. Let me see if I have one. This is kind of a synthetic brush. They're more springy. You can see this is very soft when I press into it, and this right here kind of bounces back like springy. But they also make mixes. So this one right here is a sable blend. It's both natural and synthetic, and you can see it's quite soft. It lasts a long time, makes a really good point. A good watercolor brush should be nice and full, hold plenty of paint, and make a perfect. So you want to have one round brush just like this, and you want to have one flat wash brush. It may look like this or like this. Sometimes these are rounded, kind of like an oval wash brush. Sometimes they're square, either one. And then if you plan to do some fine work, you can have also some smaller brushes. This here is called a liner or rigger. It's like a really long brush with a fine point. This is great for certain textures. grass or hair, or even writing or linear work. Sometimes you can find some kind of funky brushes like this that create interesting textures, fan brushes. It is handy to have something to organize your brushes if you have more than one. It's kind of an old one that I have from bamboo, so they all go into little pockets, and then you can roll it up like this and tie it so that you can bring it with you or put it away, and they do stay organized in one place. Mine still seem to walk away and wander around the studio to random places. Need a pencil and an eraser. Here I have a regular pencil and a regular like pink eraser. This is just fine. But also might be helpful, this right here is a kneaded eraser. This is really helpful to lighten up. You can even roll it on your drawing when you're done drawing. It's really helpful to lighten up your lines before starting with watercolor. I also have this kind of cyan color, blue colored pencil that is not readable if you're going to scan your work in, so that way the lines cannot be seen. Illustrators tend to use it. Another thing you're going to need is a container for water. I have 2 containers here, and I recommend starting a practice with 2 containers. One container is where you're going to wash your brush off. The other container is to keep clean water that you can use to wet your paper or to wet your materials you may want to use. You may want to use some black permanent ink pens. These are micron pens that are with very, very fine points. Also, this is a white gel pen, so it's really great to add some of those highlights that you may have forgotten. Color pencil or any other color pencils you can mix and add on top of watercolors. To have also for this class is a tube of white gouache. See, I'm looking for a white one. Here it is, just like this. This is a Winsor & Newton one, to make some colors opaque. Also, something called liquid concentrated watercolors. They're really intense, bright colors. Acrylic inks, which you could buy in all kinds of fluorescent or iridescent or really intense. The other thing you're going to need is some tape. You can use this painter's tape, or you could buy artist tape as well. And we're going to need this tape to tape your paper down to a board. This is a really important part of working with watercolor, so that we can wet the paper and keep it really wet and it doesn't warp and it contains its form. So just to recap, you're going to need some paints, you're going to need some brushes, you're going to need a palette to mix your colors, you're going to need some containers for water, some tape, paper, and also another helpful thing is to have a little spray bottle with water in it. You can use it to spray your colors to get them all nice and wet. You can also use it to spray the paper to re-wet the paper or to re-wet your painting.